today. Thank you for your patience. And today we are quite lucky to have two speakers who will be sharing the outcomes and results of their work during their joint participation in the 2023 cruise of the Japanese Arctic research vessel Oshoro Maru. And without much ado, I just would like to start this meeting here on so that we can hear their talks as well. So for our first speakers, we have Professor Fujio Ohnishi from the Arctic Research Center, and he, along with Nicolas Parlato, PhD student at University of Alaska Fairbanks, will be giving the talk soon. So for our first speaker, we have Fujio Ohnishi, and would you like to, he will talk about the open training during the trip for the Oshoro Maru summer trip that include trainee students across Japan from both national and private universities. And he will be providing an overview of the public training based on his experience on board as a teacher in charge of the humanities and social sciences field. I'll give the floor to Ohnishi-san.
Thank you. I need to be granted the access for the sharing.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Waga-kun, can you put
you
him...
have it now, Ohnishi-sensei.
Okay.
Yes. Now, yes. Couldn't find my slide here. Okay, but sorry, let me check the, sorry, I opened so many slide applications. Okay, now I found it. So yeah. Okay, could you see my slide?
Yes, and could you please put it on presentation mode? Yeah, well, it's coming out okay.
Okay, great. Finally, good afternoon and good morning. I'm Fujio Ohnishi, Associate Professor at the Arctic Research Center, Hokkaido University. Today, I'm very glad to have an opportunity to share my experience at the Oshoro Maru's 2023 Arctic Research Cruise. And especially, I talk about the ARCS-2 Open Training Program. And then in this program, I co-developed the social science course called the Let's Explore Your Own Approach Toward the Arctic, together with the Nicolas-san. So I'm very glad to have this opportunity. By the way, my daughter looked at the flyer, then she pointed out that I'm looking like the singing a song in a karaoke box. But this caricature drawn by one of the students who participate in this cruise, and she has art skills and background. So I really wanted to also use this nice caricature. So let me start. Okay, so first I will explain the outline, the entire profile of this program. The purpose of the program is to provide the understand for the undergraduate students an open training program to understand the marine environment and ecosystem of the Arctic Ocean and learning about also the history and culture of the Arctic region. Then the duration took place from July 12 to August 1st. Which is we used to call the leg 3. It's a part of the entire Oshoro Maru's voyage. It's just 1/3 of maybe almost half. And then this program was supported by the ARC2 priority subject on capacity building and research promotion. The picture behind is taken at the Haneda airport when we start from Japan. So let me also explain the schedule of this leg 3. We departed from Haneda and fly to Nome in Alaska. And then after having the quarantine period from 8 to 12. And then finally we got on the ship on board from July 13. And then we had the first week we had the oceanographic surveys for the students. And after that, then we had a period for making lecture and also the presentation from the students. And then we had the final presentation at the July 31. Then we arrived the Hakodate on August 1st. This is some snapshots from the oceanographic research training. The student conducted the physical and the chemical observations of the Arctic Ocean, like such as CTD, shear survey, etc., etc. And also they collected plankton and fish. And also, they also conducted the visual survey of birds and mammals and other organisms, like this. So from the Nome, we directly went to the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait, and the up north we reached at the 69th. Degrees north at the highest. Then there are several points for oceanographic, several stations for the research and observation. For me, it was first time, of course, to join this oceanographic research, and then it's, I learned a lot also. And then this, sorry, written in Japanese, but we had a lot of the, lectures for the students provided by me and also the Nakayama-san, who is the journalist from national newspaper called Asahi Shimbun. And also we had lectures from the Hayashi-san and Murata-san. Those are from the Marine Museum in Osaka. So the marked yellow color, the lectures and the time slots provided me and in collaboration with Nicholas. So we in total we had 5 days for providing the lectures and the active learning. Okay, as you see on the right, I mean the student each evening student had their own presentation about themselves or their own interest. So it was a really good opportunity for all one to deepen the mutual understanding as well. So from morning to the evening, we had a kind of very hectic schedule all days. Okay, let me explain our course called Let's Explore Your Own Approach Toward the Arctic. Then this is, as I said, co-developed together with the Nicholas-san. And many people, I think this is the introduction for the course provided for the students. And the points of here is like, I really wanted the student to understand the social context behind this voyage. Otherwise, they cannot really obtain the understanding. And also, I mean, when they building the further career as a researcher or something else, it's impossible to build such career without thinking about social context. So I mean, this time with this opportunity, I focused on how these ships, I mean, this open training was conducted, and then I wanted the student to broaden their scopes. And then the purpose of this course is by providing the students. By the way, the students were selected from universities all over the Japan. We received 60 applicants, and then finally we selected 10 students. Then I mean the students comes from not only from the schools of natural science, but also from the social science and humanities. So we have, I mean, the student, we have various students. And so, I mean, the objective of this course is providing them broad knowledge on the world surrounding the Arctic research, such as policy and the international community and the national and local communities, including the indigenous communities. And then this class aims to guide each of them to find their own approach to the Arctic. So first, we learn about the Japan's Arctic research itself and also its policy toward the Arctic to the date, and also discuss what visions are needed for the future. After that, in order to get to know the reality, the students will learn about the international relations in the Arctic and also indigenous issues surrounding indigenous people and the development, and also fisheries in Alaska, which was a good opportunity to learn about the commercial things, commercial and the business in the Arctic. And finally, in the context of the Anthropocene, an age of rethinking the relationship between the human and nature, we we considered what we should learn from the Arctic and how we should face the Arctic region as human beings living on the Earth. So we have the 5 lectures, active learning classes, in addition to the social events, in which I show the film called Kautokeino Uppløpet. That's about the struggle in the northern Sami in Norway against the government in the Middle Age. And then this is just format. This we plan this class as active learning, and meaning that assignment and lectures, and also group discussion and group learning and presentations. And then, okay, yeah, time is approaching. And the first lesson is about envisioning the future of the Arctic research. So I provided the Arctic research, I provided the materials in order to make the research on the future vision of Arctic research. Then students played a board game and also received a lecture and the group discussion, and afterwards they presented as a result. So this is a board game. This is a kind of role-playing game for as a businessman on the indigenous peoples and the researchers. So there are 6 different categories. Then students played its own rules. And then second lessons about understanding the reality. So I provided assignment to research on what is the governance, security, geopolitics in the Arctic. Then I also made a lecture on that. And then group discussion was held. And then student presented in PowerPoint. The student shows the topic, either geopolitics and governance. It was pretty well done. Then the lesson 3 was about understanding the reality on the indigenous peoples and the development. This course was provided by Nicholas. And then we assigned the reading materials, and then Nicholas made a lecture on the history of the indigenous people in the Arctic, and also he had another lecture on the relationship between indigenous people and the development. And after that, then a student had a group discussion and then presented. Sorry, I can't really enough time to explain the detail, but then let me go to further. And lesson 4 is about the understanding the reality on the Alaskan fisheries. This lesson was also provided by Nicholas. Then he provided us a reading assignment and then made a lecture on the Alaskan fisheries, and then a student had a group discussion and a presentation. I mean, this time the presentation was done by the poster presentation. So they were, as you see from this, they had the very unique, summarizing of the issue. I and Nicholas learned from that also a lot. It was a very exciting moment. And then final lessons about to learn the Arctic in the age of the Anthropocene. Let's find its own approach to the Arctic. This is kind of the most important part of our course. So I provided this was provided me and also together with Nicholas. the reading assignment and the lectures from both from me and Nicholas, and then group discussion, the poster presentation. And then in the end, we also played the board game again. This is a poster. I mean, we separated students into two groups, and then they had the keyword, the Arctic glass, and we are the Earth. Those are very also interesting and understanding and learning by the students. It is very much, how to say, I mean, the original and then very, how to say, subjective, objective understanding on the Arctic. It was great, so great. Okay, let me conclude. So lessons learned from this experience. I mean, the student could widen the scopes of the interest, because initially they had its own interest, like on the fish or on marine mammal, and then they didn't really recognize the other interests. So then after providing this kind of comprehensive course and the subjective learning, they came to broaden their own interest and understand the importance of various matters. That's very important. And then I also find that the students deepen the intimacy and the respect to the nature. This is not only from the our course, but from by engaging in the observation, collecting plankton and the fish and so on. And also students get to know the Arctic science and its social context, like research and policy and so on. And then afterwards, the student had enough opportunity to have a personal reflection and the findings on their own lives and the career building further. It was presented in the end of the course. So my personal finding is like I felt vibration of us, because I'm almost 1 month I was on the ship, so I always like moving in the line of the waves. So yeah, I really reconsider my daily routine. So it was so many things, and it's too much sometimes. So that's my own personal reflection. But anyway, thank you so much for your attention. It was very short, but then I think I provided the summary of the social science course. Thank you for your listening.
Yeah. Thank you, Onishi-san, for that wonderful presentation detailing the daily activities that has transpired during the trip. And it was really good to know and learn that there are students that are quite interested in looking into, putting together the very big gap that is between social sciences and natural sciences, particularly in the Arctic. With that, I would like to open the floor for questions. Are there any questions from the floor? You can just raise your hand, or you can drop your questions in the chat box if that would work easily for you. So then I'll start the question. It's actually very interesting to me to learn about these things as well. It's been a while that I've been in a ship and working with, and I haven't been working really close with social scientists, and it's refreshing to know perspective and insights from younger generations about their perspective on the Arctic. My question is this kind of course, do you have any plans of sort of a sustaining this course, or is it like a one-time activity?
Thank you for your question, Eileen. I think this is kind of first trial for our national project as well. It is very rare to have this kind of comprehensive oceanographic voyage. So I really want to continue to this kind of course together with the oceanography graphers. But then it depends on the kind of founders and also the organizers how to evaluate these times. The results. So I'm waiting for the good evaluation.
Okay, that's good to hear, and I hope that it gets funded to continue to reach out. And I think it's something that is also needed, especially to encourage collaboration with both parts of the sciences, I guess.
Yes.
Do we have any other questions?
By the way, let me share also. This is the T-shirts designed by also the students.
Okay, that's
It
well, they're
says the
really
Oshoro Arctic. That's very cute. And this is also one of the new discovery by by the participation from social science students. They subjectize its own approach to the Arctic, which is really needed for think of not only the objective data but also this kind of subjectization is really needed for general public to understand the happening in the Arctic. So
Yeah.
this is just a start.
That's really cool. We do have one question from the audience. Hayashi-san, you can just go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I think among 10 students, I guess mainly they are from natural sciences, for example, marine biology or maybe, I don't know, oceanographic science. And I think you taught many courses regarding social sciences. And so you mentioned that the students broaden their scope or maybe broaden the horizon. Could you give me maybe a couple of examples where how their perspective changed? For example, maybe students who are only interested in marine biology, or maybe interested in maybe I don't know climatology. How they changed, what kind of educational activities did you provide? Maybe discussion, or maybe you mentioned about role-playing game, but just give us a couple of concrete examples.
For example, by playing taking the role of the different social actors like researchers or businessmen or indigenous people population, they they learn from different perspectives from the others. And then we did similar kind of things in the through the workshops as well. So for the student, it's very important first to listen to the voices from different student colleagues, right? This is the first point to expand their own, because they, then they also through this mutual learning, they could reach to the point where otherwise never they go into in their own studies. So the mutual learning is very important, and then they understand the connections between the biology and also climate and also the social lives on the terrestrial, and also the what kind of research supported this kind of research. The research science activity And also through the movie, we also discussed about the relationship of the modernity with the science or church and that kind of things. So this is very broad topics on the table, and then it depends on the student, but then by utilizing the mutual learning, I think the students succeeded to broaden their scopes in many ways.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Sounds like a really great seminars or educational opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Onishi-san, for that wonderful talk. And just a heads up to everyone, because we started a little bit late. I hope everybody just give us like 10, 15 minutes more of their time today. We'll have our second speaker for this morning or for this afternoon. Let's all welcome Nicolas Parlato, and he will be also giving us his or sharing with us the results of his interviews and participation during the cruise. And his work will sought to understand if and how the beliefs in Japan's complex folk religion of Shinto related to the narrative, scientific practices, and worldviews of those participating in the cruise. And with that, I will give the floor to Nicolas, please.
Thank you very much, Irene. Need to clear my throat, and I'm so happy to see. I feel like it's a mini reunion, even with just people's names in their Zoom boxes, because many of the faculty and the students from the cruise are here in this Zoom room. So it's really, I'm just glad to see you all here, and I hope that Ohnishi Sensei and I do some justice to what was a really incredible experience. So I am now sharing screen. I hope everybody can see that.
Yes, it's coming out perfect.
Awesome. So I want to thank Ohnishi Sensei for the incredible introduction and overview and sharing what I think the students and I found to be just a really successful experimental educational kind of process opportunity. And thank you everybody for being here. I'm going to be sharing some of the background stories and initial findings, not results, from the research I conducted as part of this cruise. And the title of the presentation and the research project itself is called Science, Shizenkan, and the Sea, which refers to the intersection of themes that I was trying to elucidate, namely the relationship between scientific practice, Shizenkan, or one's personal and philosophical outlook on nature, and the marine environment itself. But before I get into that, many thanks are in order. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me, and it was made possible by a lot of individuals, institutions, and the immense efforts of Hokkaido University to pull together a complex research cruise. So first I want to thank Hisatomo Waga here at IARC, who I think is in the room, who was the facilitator of IARC's participation in the cruise. And I want to thank Hiromichi Ueno, who served as the chief scientist and organizer of the cruise, as well as my two fearless interpreters, Moana-san, who I saw here, and Ohnishi Sensei himself, for helping me navigate the complexities of Japanese language. So thank you all. The whole thing wouldn't have been possible without you. I want to thank the crew, the cooks, the faculty, and the students on the ship who made my time so special, safe, and delicious. The leadership at IARC and Hokkaido University who approved and encouraged the voyage, and my friends and family who supported me through all the intermittent communication being on a ship. So as Ohnishi Sensei pointed out, our joint portion of the voyage was leg 3, which involved this 10-student multidisciplinary kind of program with giving them the opportunity to experience the Arctic and conduct research and learn a bunch of different topics. And that was a 3-week leg. But prior to that, I had also taken part in the 10-day leg that went from Nome into the Arctic and then back. That was much more heavily focused on natural science, and was all the students there were dedicated to one or another form of marine sciences, oceanography, plankton studies, marine biology, etc. So these were two very different groups of students and groups of people on the ship, and the experiences were very different, but I kind of worked with everybody to try to answer some of my research questions. So the interest that compelled this research is a long-standing curiosity about Shinto, which is Japan's traditional folk religion, as it's often described, and my own personal interest in contemporary animism, especially that preserved by Arctic indigenous peoples and the peoples of the Amazon. There's been a really fierce debate going on for decades now among anthropologists around what the category of animism means, how it constitutes and shapes worldviews, what its relationship is to totemism and other kinds of what might be called pre-modern worldviews, and how it relates to the contemporary world. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm sidestepping all of these subtleties, because that's a whole thing in and of itself. Just to describe kind of what Shinto is, and at its heart are the beings called the kami. And in short, kami are gods, spirits, and even demons that inhabit and animate virtually all entities of the natural world. And Japan is positively brimming with shrines called jinja that are dedicated to these kami and invite good fortune to businesses, homes, cities, communities, etc. This is an image of two rocks off of the north coast of Hokkaido that I encountered with a torii gate on one of them. They're very remarkable rocks. So what I wanted to learn by joining the Oshoro Maru was how much Shinto, which I only knew about through books, games, and media through living in America, how that was reflected in Japanese science. And here are just some images. These are the 7 lucky gods who bring different forms of fortune and skill and prestige, who ride on a treasure boat. This is a torii gate featuring a fish, a sacred tree. These are called a shintai, an object of worship that's surrounded by a shimenawa, sacred rock. Anyway, animism in Japan, and Shinto in particular, really demonstrates a profound respect for and recognizes a personhood in these agents of the natural world. So in order to understand the contemporary role of animistic thought in Japan, I found it was important to educate myself on the history of science, specifically marine science, and of religion in Japan's millennia-old history. And what I found to be this ambiguous cognitive space between religion and culture, that the distinctions are very difficult to tease out. It has its origins in global pre-modernity, before strict divisions emerged between the scientific, the religious, and the artistic realms of activity. So much of this strict disciplinary and sociological siloing that we're familiar with today is really only 150 years old in most societies. And the hard lines that we have placed around these areas of life actually obscure the profound ways that artistic, religious, cosmological commitments influence science and vice versa. So to give a very broad background of religion and science in Japan, Japan has been steeped in Chinese scientific thought since the 7th century, I believe, including different strains of Confucianism, and other kind of scientific, alchemical, and health traditions, medical traditions. Japan first engaged Western knowledge in the form of Dutch knowledge called Rengaku in the 17th century, and then opened to other foreign influence in the mid-19th century after ending the policy of national isolation known as Sakoku. And they received education and technical assistance around a range of areas. But the adoption of formal Western scientific methods for oceanography and marine biology and fisheries began in earnest only at the turn of the 20th century, with the creation of state imperial fisheries institutions, the conducting of the Fundamental Fisheries Survey, and the establishment of over 30 experimental fisheries stations across Japan. Now, in parallel to this, Japan has a very complex and rich religious history, and has been home to multiple traditions since the 500s AD, including Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. that themselves became syncretically integrated into existing folk traditions. Now, these folk traditions, which remained largely local and diverse, but often adapted to Buddhism, are known as Shinto, and only achieved formal unity under the Japanese state during the Meiji era. So prior to that, they were widely dispersed and had different systems of patronage and support and local deities. But it's essential, in fact, to note that Shinto is very deeply associated in contemporary Japan with the imperial government and its use in fomenting nationalist and military sentiment prior to and during World War II. And this has played a large role in what is understood as the decline of formal religiosity and the rise of atheism in post-war Japan. And this image I have here, I think some of the students might recognize, is a figure named Sugawara no Michizane, who is a famous 9th century scholar, poet, and calligrapher. And he was a scholar, but he was posthumously elevated to the status of a god or a kami, namely the kami of learning and science. And to me, his ongoing relevance for Japanese society, especially for students who pray at his shrines prior to their entrance examinations, demonstrates this thin line between the academic, religious, and cultural spheres. So he's an interesting figure with a very exciting and mysterious history for anybody who's interested in looking into him. So my methodology and research questions, I'll go through these a little quickly, but I did 35 structured interviews with crew, faculty, and students engaged in participant observation during these scientific practices, and also just getting to know people and getting to enjoy meals with each other, and then reflexive journaling. And the questions that drove the research were: what kind of attitudes and beliefs about the natural world do Japanese marine scientists, students, and shipmen ascribe to? How do those guide their professional and scientific activities? And are there generational differences? So an anthropologist who has worked in Japan was one of the inspirations for this, and his name is Casper Brun Jensen, and he identified Shinto and animistic elements in different areas of Japanese technoscience and in like animal testing, medical animal testing. But my participant observation did not reveal any scientific practices on the Oshoro Maru that evidence that distinctly ritualistic or religious way of working with sea creatures or water. I noticed that Western scientific protocols around trawling transects and methods for sampling and analysis were followed with strict diligence. And animals collected from the trawl were treated just as I would have expected scientific specimens to be treated. The delicate equipment received the expected amount of tender, loving care, perhaps with an extra level of fastidiousness. And though it could be read by an overly eager interpreter as evidence of a quote unquote more than human consciousness, it was clear that the students who donned horns and ears on their helmets were just having a good time. But I really wanted to put horns and ears on my helmets and never ended up doing it. So, but Shinto itself appeared rather in other places in a more explicit way. Perhaps the most visible and symbolic representation of Japanese beliefs was the kamidana, a small altar behind the bridge where offerings and prayers were offered to the spirit of the ship. And the spirit of the ship is something known as the funadana. And at the beginning of each year's research season, the Oshoro Maru receives a fresh blessing at the kamidana from an ordained Shinto priest. And over the course of the year and at the beginning of each voyage, new offerings of rice and sake would also be made to the kamidana. Prayers are offered prior to the first deployment of trawl nets each voyage because it's a dangerous activity. So in order to ensure safety and also to ensure that the catch is valuable, scientifically valuable and successful. So this practice of honoring the ship and expressing gratitude for its task of carrying its passengers safely across the sea is an essential practice on the Oshoro Maru. But this animistic notion of a ship as a person and an agent of its own fate is actually not limited to Japan, but is notable in nearly all maritime cultures around the world. Another area that I found kind of religion or Shinto to be present was that many of the students and crew shared that prior to the voyage, they had visited shrines to pray for a safe and successful journey. Some of them carried amulets called omamori, which they received either as gifts from family members or they themselves had purchased at shrines. And these omamori were meant to bring health, fortune, and protection during the journey. However, in the opinion of many students, both visiting the shrines and the omamori reflected cultural practices rather than having religious or spiritual significance. And these are two shrines here, the Kotehira-gu Shrine near the city of Kagawa, and the Itsukushima Shrine near in Hakodate, both of which are dedicated to protecting seafarers in particular. So what I discovered, and probably could have known, if I'd been paying more attention, was that Japanese people have a deep and profound relationship to seafood that was very evident on the ship. Now, because of this aforementioned ambiguity between religion and culture in Japan, it was difficult for me, especially in this short experience, to really tease out how preparation and enjoyment of food reflects religious, cultural, or practical concerns. So I'm not going to attempt to do that here. I'll simply observe that not unlike saying grace among Christian communities, each meal we had on the ship began with gasho, the putting of hands together, and the reciting of itadakimasu, a word of thanks. And meals likewise ended with a chorus of gochiso sama deshita, which I was told meant not simply thank you for the excellent meal, but was a broader thanks to the animals and plants that composed the meal itself. And last of the more easily identified animistic elements was the regular viewing of and the profound love for the films of Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki, which I also shared with all of the students. So the students, and to a lesser degree the adults, had entire films like My Neighbor Totoro memorized, sang iconic songs from the films, and watched some of them twice or even 3 times over the course of the cruise. And these films are very well known for their depictions of spirit beings and profound thematic appreciation and concern for nature. So because of time constraints, and I don't know how much I'm going over right now, Irene, how much time do I have?
I was asking the audience for like 10 minutes stops, so you can have like, I'll stretch us to 5 minutes and then we'll have a 2-minute question afterwards. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna have to cut some of this short, so I'll give it my best shot. So just some preliminary kind of final observations, because I haven't done the actual quantitative work of assessing the interviews and doing analysis, but among the students who comprise the majority of my interviewees, they expressed that neither Shinto nor religious feeling in general impacted their scientific work. Some of them observing that religion and science don't really interact at all, but can exist in the same time in mutual respect. But when asked about Shizenkan specifically, their feelings about nature, many students did express high levels of concern and responsibility for nature, often citing it as a reason for their scientific work and their choice of an academic major. Some students openly expressed feelings such as awe, love, joy, and respect for nature. And with only 2 exceptions, everyone seemed to express some personal concept of kami-sama, or God, some concept that often was either a source of aid or the force of life itself, some kind of force of fate or destiny. I didn't encounter too much, and students who are here, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, too much outright atheism, I suppose. Other students described their motivation to study the marine sciences in terms of pure scientific interest, and many cited specific professors and classes as their inspiration. So in the coming months, Ohnishi sensei and I will not only be conducting additional interviews with more senior scientists to try to get a more balanced representation in the participant pool, but we'll also do this quantitative analysis of the questions asked and correlate them with variables such as gender and hometowns. And we hope to produce a paper, I believe, with Ueno sensei's participation as well. And we hope to be able to share it with you in the future. So I had a section here that was going to be dedicated to personal reflection, but in light of the time constraints, you'll have to do without that. So, I'll conclude there, and thank you all very much.
Well, Nicholas, thank you for really keeping the time. And thank you everyone for staying with us and listening to the two previous talks that we have. And now I will be opening the floor for questions to Nicholas. And also it would be an overall open floor question. So if you have some of the questions that you haven't thought earlier when Onishi-san presented his work is also welcome. Yes, we have one question from Nagai-san. You can just go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
you're coming out perfect.
Good afternoon and ohayo gozaimasu, everyone. Thank you for your great presentation. I'm Mitsunagai, undergraduate student of Faculty of Education, Kyoto University, Japan. I'm very happy to see Ohnishi-sensei and Nicholas-san and other participants of wonderful Arctic exploration again. I want to ask a question to Nicholas-san as an interviewee of your interview. And two questions. The first question is, I wonder whether there is a difference between your prediction of Shizenkan, Japanese heart, and the result of interview. Was your interview is as you expected? This is the first question. And as a second question, I want to know your opinion of English translation word of Shizenkan. Of course, it is very difficult to translate Japanese unique and characteristic concept into other languages. I know how difficult it is, but if you dare to translate Shizenkan, what English word or phrase you use? I want to these two questions.
Thank you, Mitsu. It's really good to see you. Yeah, so I would like to give myself the benefit of saying that I went in with few expectations, but you know, I think I was expecting to see, like, not from the interviews, but from watching the science being conducted, just because I had read some things that said, you know, there might be a bit more, you know, kind of demonstrating humility, you know, towards like these sea creatures that we were, you know, examining and studying. But so that's where I was more surprised by, like, the really strict scientific kind of conduct of that work. During the interviews, I think actually, yeah, I was surprised at the, I wasn't surprised at all that many students expressed, you know, a love and affection for nature, like that there was a sense of responsibility, a sense of that conservation, environmentalist drive, because I feel like that's a generational thing in many ways, and the fact that you all, as you know, like intelligent, bright young students coming onto a research cruise, it didn't surprise me that you all, expressed a lot of affection and concern for the current environmental problems that we're facing. And I guess I did come in thinking that, you know, because I've watched a lot of Japanese animation and like video games, that, you know, some amount of that, you know, the presence of kami and the presence of Magatama and things like that would have, you know, played more of a prominent role. And it only did with a few students who seemed like they were really just like invested in those art forms or invested in that area of knowledge. One student who I'm not going to name just had a vast knowledge of the history of Shinto and all the different figures who played a role in it. And so, like, you know, for some, I guess I understood that just like in the US, not everybody cares about the history of the country, some people just find it much more interesting and, are going to be drawn to it. And for Shizenkan, I've just been translating it as view of nature or perspective on nature. And there might be a better way to say it, especially to capture some of the more culturally subtle dimensions of it. And to your point about language, the more I get into it, the more I realize just like how difficult it is to translate so much of what's contained in a Japanese concept into English. It's just the barrier between those really feels, profound, and like there's so much more depth. There's depth that can never be conveyed in a direct translation. And so, yeah, and that's pretty much it. I hope that was okay for you.
Thank you for answering my question. Thank you.
And thank you again for our two speakers, and thank you for your wonderful talks. And I think that we are pretty much out of time, but thank you once again. Should there be any question, please don't hesitate. I think that your emails are also written, or if there is any more question from the group, especially attending now, they can just reach out to you. Would that be okay? Fujio-san and Nicholas. Okay. So once again, thank you very much for accommodating our requests as speakers for today's joint seminar. And we were really happy to hear about the work that you've been doing on board the Oshoro Maru. And for the participants and the audience, thank you very much for your patience. And again, we apologize for the delay. And we hope to be able to see everyone again for the next seminar. So this IARC joint seminar is done every 2 months. And we are sharing this information through in UAF as well as here in the Japanese side. So we'll be closing this seminar, and thank you all for your presence. Okay, that would be all. Thanks.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much.
thanks.